Today, we're talking about why so many women have been conditioned to silence themselves, why it's not your fault, and most importantly, how to reclaim your voice, your boundaries, and your right to say no without guilt. And stay with me to the end of this episode because I'll be sharing 2 resources you can grab right now to help you make this shift. One is totally free, and the other is a powerful, low-cost next step. I'll also give you a sneak peek at something big I've been working on behind the scenes, my signature program, the Reinvention Code. Welcome to How to Lose the Weight, the podcast for women ready to stop waiting for someday and live life now. I'm your host, Holly Toscanini, and I'm here to help you break free from perfectionism, self-doubt, and the someday mindset. Together, we'll dive into real conversations about self-trust, empowerment, and living authentically. If you're ready to reconnect with your intuition and step into your power, you're in the right place. Let's lose the weight and start living fully right now. Hey friends, and welcome back to How to Lose the Weight, the podcast where we talk about what it really takes to stop waiting for your life to start and start living with intuition, confidence, and self-trust. I'm your host, Holly Toscanini, and today we're diving into something that hits so many women, especially in midlife, kind of right in the gut. Good girl syndrome. Ever heard of it? It's that internal pressure to be agreeable, pleasing, accommodating, self-sacrificing, to say yes when you want to scream no, to smile politely when you're really gritting your teeth, and to downplay your needs, your ideas, your desires, just to keep the peace. Sound familiar? Let's kind of unpack this. I want to start with something that so many of us have felt but haven't always had the language for. Good girl syndrome isn't a diagnosis necessarily, but it is a cultural conditioning. It's a silent, sticky set of rules that teaches women their worth is measured by how agreeable, accommodating, and selfless they can be. It's the internalized belief that being nice, polite, helpful, and pleasant is the most important thing a woman can be. That your job, consciously or subconsciously, is to keep everybody around you comfortable, no matter how uncomfortable you are. And that's not just a personality trait, it's a survival strategy. It's a shape-shifting performance we've been doing since we were little girls to fit into a system that tells us being liked is safer than being free. Now here's how it could show up in daily life. Things like saying yes when every cell in your body is screaming no. Or maybe it's apologizing for things that aren't your fault, or just apologizing for simply existing. Or smiling when you're seething inside because it feels easier than speaking up. Or maybe it's about avoiding confrontation at all costs. Or maybe you feel paralyzed when you're asked to make a decision because you're just too tuned in to what everybody around you wants. Or it could show up as feeling anxious, guilty even, when you try to set a boundary. And the wild part, most of us don't even realize we're doing it. It is so deeply woven into our identity that we think it's just who we are. But it's not. It's who we were taught to be. So where does this come from? Well, this is where we name what's really going on. It's patriarchy. Now, before anybody gets squirmy about the word, let me make this clear. When I say patriarchy, I'm not blaming individual men. I'm talking about a system, a centuries-old structure that elevates masculine traits like dominance, control, emotional suppression, and punishes feminine ones, or distorts them into tools of compliance. See, patriarchy rewards women for being quiet, passive, nurturing, selfless, and small. And it punishes us socially, economically, and emotionally when we step outside that box. Think about how early this starts. A little girl who says what she wants is called bossy. A teen who sets boundaries is labeled dramatic. And a woman who knows her worth is called intimidating. And a mother who prioritizes herself is called selfish. We are praised for putting others first, even if it means putting ourselves last. We're taught that if we speak up, we might be seen as rude. If we say no, we might be called difficult. And if we take up too much space, we might be judged as arrogant. And if we express our emotions too freely, well, we're unstable. Not enough, we're needy. Too much, and we're dangerous. And so we learn to shrink, to smile, to say, I'm fine, when we're not, to become fluent in everyone else's needs while forgetting how to speak our own. But here's what I want you to hear today, clearly and with love. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're not crazy, flaky, hysterical, or overly emotional. You are responding perfectly and intuitively to a system that trained you to abandon yourself. And now it's time to unlearn that. Not with shame or blame, but with empowerment, with compassion, with curiosity. And yes, with a big soulful yes to your own voice, your own needs, and your own truth. Because being good isn't the goal anymore. Being whole is. So let's talk about what good girl syndrome does to us, because the effects are real and they're not just emotional. They're physical, psychological, relational, and even spiritual. Living in constant agreement mode may help us feel safe, but it does not help us feel fulfilled. So let's start with the emotional turmoil. When you say yes, but mean no, over and over again, you train yourself to betray your own intuition. You override the part of you that knows, to discount your feelings in favor of somebody else's comfort. That leads to emotional exhaustion, chronic frustration, and a low-grade resentment that simmers just under the surface. You might find yourself snapping at people for small things, not because you're angry with them, but because you're angry at yourself for not speaking up when you had the chance. And then there's the identity loss. Many women I work with say things like, I don't even know what I want anymore. Or, I've spent so long caring for everybody else, I've forgotten who I am. Sound familiar? This happens when you're always in reaction mode, responding to needs, expectations, and obligations that aren't yours. Your sense of self doesn't just dim, it gets buried. And the longer it stays buried, the harder it becomes to even name what you want, let alone go after it. And then there's also a relational cost. Good girl syndrome doesn't make relationships stronger, it makes them lopsided. You become the overgiver, the peacekeeper, the one who absorbs all the emotional labor. You teach people to expect your silence, your sacrifice, and your compliance. And when you finally do set a boundary, they're shocked. They might push back. They might guilt trip you. They might even call you selfish. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you've changed the terms of a relationship that was built on you abandoning yourself. And here's the hard truth. When you start honoring your needs, not everybody's going to clap. The ones who truly care about you, not just what you do for them, they're going to adjust or they'll exit. And either way, that's information you can trust. Now let's talk about the guilt, because this is the emotion that hooks most women. You know you need to say no. You know you're exhausted. You know you're overbooked, overworked, overstretched. But the moment you try to draw a boundary, here comes the inner critic. You're being so difficult. You're going to let everybody down. Ugh, you're not a good person if you say no. Or, who do you think you are? And that guilt, it's not proof you're doing something wrong. It's proof you're disrupting a pattern that was never meant to serve you in the first place. The guilt is your nervous system flinching at the idea of no longer being the good girl. It's a withdrawal symptom from people-pleasing. It's the echo of all the messages you've absorbed about what it means to be nice. But you know what's better than nice? Being honest, being authentic, being whole. Now, here's what I want you to take away from this. You don't have to earn rest. You don't have to apologize for saying no. You don't have to prove your worth through overgiving. And you don't have to be the good girl to be loved, respected, or successful. You just have to learn to be you, real, grounded, and free. All right, now that we've named what's happening and what it's actually costing you, let's talk a little bit about what to do about it, because awareness is the first step, but embodiment, that's where the magic is. Now, I want to talk about reclaiming your voice, Learning how to set boundaries that feel aligned with who you are and what you want for yourself, and learning to say no without guilt, even if it feels a little uncomfortable at first. Because here's the truth, my friend, your voice does not need to be loud to be powerful. It just needs to be yours. So the first step is to identify your good girl scripts, because before you could rewrite a story, you need to know what story you've been telling yourself, right? I mean, most of us are walking around with invisible scripts running the show. Things like, if I speak up, I'll be seen as difficult. If I say no, they won't like me. If I disappoint someone, I'm a bad person. And if I don't fix everything, I've failed. Now, where did these scripts come from? Well, probably a mix of family dynamics, cultural messages, school, media, and maybe even early childhood experiences. But here's what matters. You can choose to stop repeating what no longer serves you. So get your journal out and jot down a couple of these prompts to come back to later. Some good questions you can ask yourself in your journal are, whose approval am I afraid of losing? Where in my life am I saying yes when I want to say no? And when do I silence myself to avoid discomfort? Once you see this pattern, you can interrupt it. All right, so I'll jot it down again, but remember, or I'll jot it down. I'm going to repeat it. You can always come back to this part of the podcast and jot it down again. But the 3 questions are, whose approval am I afraid of losing? Where in my life am I saying yes when I really want to say no? And when do I silence myself to avoid discomfort? All right, now that you've got those, let's move on to step 2, which is really all about practicing small boundaries. Because I know boundary setting can feel pretty big and scary, especially when it's new. So I don't want you to start with like the high stakes conversations, but let's start with something small. We got to build our boundary muscles with some lower pressure situations. That way we can build confidence and regulate our nervous system response that tends to get triggered when we start to talk about the things that we need. So here are some scripts that you might want to consider trying. Maybe something like, thank you, but I'm not available for that. Or, thanks for thinking of me, but I need to pass this time. Or, I need some time to think about that. Let me get back to you. Or, wow, that just doesn't work for me. Or, I'd prefer something different. And yes, at first, you might feel the urge to jump in and try to over-explain, justify, or apologize for your no, but you don't owe anyone a dissertation on your boundaries or why you need to set them. Because boundaries aren't a rejection of somebody else. They're an act of protection for yourself. And remember, people who benefit from your lack of boundaries may also resist your new ones. And that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means you're finally doing it right. All right, the third step is to rewire that guilt into some gratitude. So I want to talk a little bit about that sticky guilt that tends to pop up when we start honoring our own needs. I want you to consider reframing what guilt means, because guilt doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're healing. So that rising discomfort you feel after saying no, it's not a danger signal. It's your nervous system detoxifying from decades of being trained to abandon yourself. So let's practice swapping out guilt for a little gratitude. And this could look like when you say no to something that isn't aligned, maybe you say, I'm proud of myself for honoring my truth. Or maybe you say, I trust that my no creates space for something better. Or you might say, every time I speak up, I teach myself that I'm worth protecting. The good news is you don't have to be perfect at this. You don't have to set boundaries flawlessly or speak up without shaking or having that tremor in your voice. You just need to practice. Over time, those small shifts really do compound, and you start speaking up more naturally, and you start recognizing red flags sooner. You start making decisions that feel rooted, not reactive. And maybe most importantly, you start liking yourself more. Because there is something truly magical that happens when a woman reclaims her voice. She stops settling. She stops apologizing. And she starts living fully, finally, as herself. So let's be real. Unlearning good girl syndrome isn't a one and done mindset shift, right? It's a practice. It's a process. It's really a sacred reclamation of your power. Because when you've spent decades prioritizing other people's needs, opinions, and comfort, coming back to your own voice doesn't always feel intuitive at first. But that doesn't mean you're not capable. It just means you need the right support, tools that don't force you to hustle or to fix yourself, but instead invite you to listen inward and lead with truth. And that's exactly why I created two beautiful resources to help you move forward. One is completely free, and the other is a really simple, low-cost next step if you're ready to go a little deeper. The first is the Intuitive Pivot Planner. This is a free guide to help you clarify your next chapter and take courageous, aligned action. The Intuitive Pivot Planner is your gentle, empowering guide to help you reconnect with your inner wisdom and take your very first steps towards a life that feels like it truly fits. No pressure, no hustle, just a plan. Just you tuning in and showing up with intention. Now, I created this for the woman who's ready to stop waiting and start living, the woman who's tired of silencing her desires or squeezing herself into old rules that no longer feel like home, the woman who knows deep down that she was meant for something more and is finally ready to claim it. If you've been feeling a pull to change something in your life, to start fresh, explore a new direction, or finally prioritize you, then this planner found its way to you at the perfect time. Whether you're feeling stuck, burned out, or simply craving something more aligned with who you're becoming, know this: you do not need to have it all figured out. You just need the courage to trust your intuition enough to get started. Now, inside the planner, you're going to find 3 intuitive steps to tune in to what you truly want, not just what you should want, to identify your next micro pivot, and to reconnect with your desires without the pressure of perfection. This is your first step out of overwhelm and into alignment, a quiet yes to being yourself. You can download it for free in the show notes. So print it out, write in it, and let it be your soft re-entry into your own inner knowing. Now, the next thing I've created is the Midlife Reinvention Map, how to start over at any age without the overthinking, fear, or self-doubt. Now, this mini course is for women who are ready to go from circling and indecision to finally moving forward with clarity and confidence. This is not another long course or mindset workbook that sits on your hard drive either. This is a fast, focused, high-impact roadmap that helps you get clear, take action, and start over with confidence in under an hour. And it's designed for busy women who need immediate clarity, so no more "I don't know what I want." It gives you a step-by-step action plan, so there's no more overthinking, just some simple next steps. And it allows you to gain momentum now, so you stop waiting and start taking action today. Because reinvention isn't about age, it's about alignment. And inside this course, you'll get a 30-minute video training that breaks down the exact framework I use with my coaching clients. You'll get a printable reinvention map workbook to help you apply it in real time, and 3 juicy bonuses. The first is the 24-hour confidence challenge that will help you take bold, intuitive action fast. The next chapter manifesto that will help you declare what you're done with and what you're ready to step into. And the permission slip to show up messy. You can stop overthinking and start showing up just as you are. This isn't about becoming a different person. It's about becoming the woman you've always been, but without the guilt, the people-pleasing, or the shrinking. You can grab the Midlife Reinvention Map for just $27. I'll drop the link in the show notes. All of these tools are designed to meet you where you are, with warmth, with structure, and with that deep knowing that you're already enough. And if you've been sitting there thinking, "I want to change, but I don't know where to begin," you can begin here. Now, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with this. You are not here to be agreeable. You're here to be authentic. You're not here to be silent. You are here to speak, to live, and to lead with truth, courage, and soul. And if this work speaks to you, if you're craving real transformation, not just tips, I want you to know something special is coming. I'll soon be opening the doors to my signature group coaching experience, the Reinvention Code. Now, this is for the woman who's done waiting, who's ready to rise, who's ready to come home to herself fully and unapologetically. And if that sounds like you, make sure you're on the waiting list. You'll be the first to know when it opens. So, until next time, speak your truth, honor your yes, honor your no, and remember, you don't need to be liked to be free. You can grab all of the goodies I talked about in today's podcast episode on the show notes, so be sure to head over there as soon as you're done. You've got this, my friend. Until next time, bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to How to Lose the Weight. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a conversation. And if you found value in this episode, I'd love it if you could leave a review. It really helps the show reach more women like you who are ready to step into their power. For more insights and inspiration, follow me on Instagram at Holly Toscanini or visit hollytoscanini.com. Until next time, remember, stop waiting and start living.